Are you living a Cinderella story? That is the narrative or paradigm in which we are living our life from. I want to share a Akashic record session that I did with my friend and what we found in her field, because I feel that a lot of us are living this experience and we need to write a new story about our life. When I went into her energy field, I saw, if you've seen Cinderella, where her fairy godmother comes in and is like bippity boppity boop and she turns from her kind of distressed clothes into this beautiful ball gown, and there's all this sparkly energy around her while she's twirling. And that is what I saw with her, one of her inner children, and it was me and her doing the twirling around with the sparkles, which that was super fun. And her inner child was like, wee. And I started thinking about something that was going on in my life during this session, but it was needed, because when I came back into her fields, I couldn't find her inner child anywhere. I was like, girl, where did you go? And she said, you got to come find me. And we were playing hide and seek. So I'm looking in all of these different places, and a cabinet appears. And when kind of like you would have underneath a kitchen sink, and I open it up, I was like, girl, what are you doing in here? She started laughing, and it was funny. And she said, shh, I'm being sneaky. Okay. And then she pointed to something behind me, and I turned around and I was like, oh my God. And there was this shadow figure that was standing in front of me. Not like a negative entity or anything like that. Okay. It was a shadow aspect of her, the adult's field that I was going into. And the shadow tried to get at the little girl in the cabinet, the child. And I said, not today. I said, no ma'am. And I put up a barrier that you could see through, almost kind of like plexiglass but stronger. Like a unbreakable glass wall. And that was funny, kind of like a Cinderella slipper. Anyway, so I opened the cabinet back up and I said, hey, can you come out here? The shadow can't get you. Okay, I put up this barrier here, and she was still a little bit nervous. And I said, that's okay. And I was thinking about, where can I take her where she would feel safe? And what was really funny is we were transported to the kitchen that I grew up in with my grandparents. And that was a really beautiful moment for me, because even though sometimes it was a little bit difficult to navigate in my childhood, I did feel very safe in my grandparents. Oh my God. My apologies. Okay. Anyway, not me dropping the phone while we're talking about safety. So I did feel very safe there. And that's the vibrations that was in that place in the astral of what would feel safe at my grandparents' home. And that's what I honed in on. So we went there, and I said, do you feel okay to come out now? And she said, yes. And she was sitting on the counter, and I said, hey, you and I are going to go outside and go play. I grew up on a tree farm. It was really beautiful. Another version of me is going to go and talk to this shadow being. So you will be safe. And so I took her outside, and then this other version of me, doing some bilocation, walked around and was speaking to the shadow. And I said, hey girl, what's going on? And she was having a difficult time telling me and articulating because of all the shadows. I said, why don't we go somewhere that's a little bit more beautiful and relaxing? Where do you want to go? And she said, the beach. I said, great, I love the beach. And so we went there, and again was trying to get her to tell me, why were you going after the inner child? And she still could not communicate. And I said, why don't we sit down? And another thing, she was very shocked that I asked her where she wanted to go, because she thought I was going to attack her because she was trying to get at the child. And that's not what we're doing. Like, I know that she was hurting very deeply, and I didn't know why she was trying to get at her, but I knew it wasn't trying to attack her. And It's like she was trying to do something for her. And so I said, we're going to sit on the beach and I'm going to comb your hair. And kind of like the comb that Ariel has in The Little Mermaid, or it might have been a brush, but I told her to sit down and I started brushing her hair. And what that was doing was helping her central nervous system relax. And it was giving her motherly energy that she needed, and nurture and care. And when I was doing that, the shadow started to dispel off of her. And it was actually my friend who I was reading for. And I knew she was down in there somewhere. But those shadows create like so much distortion. It's from trauma. And when I said, hey, why were you trying to get at the child? She said, I need to save her. And I said, save her from what? She said, the Cinderella story that she is experiencing. And I said, okay. When we are watching these very popular movies, there are so many wonderful stories that accompany with them, but at the same time, it can create a lot of negative programming within us, i.e., rags to riches and being saved by a knight in shining armor or a prince. I'm not saying that that is a bad story. Like, obviously, there is a happy ending to that. And there's triumph and success, vindication, you know, all these different things. And what I was seeing in her field, which might be yours too, is you have experienced that. A lot of lack and instability, feeling ostracized, being mistreated, being abused. There's a lot of different things that we can experience in childhood, in our younger years, and even into adult years as well. And we're waiting for the fairy godmother to come in and save us or support us or help us. And that's all true and accurate, okay? That is a reality that one can definitely experience. What I was telling my friend, however, is, and I was telling her shadow aspect, I said, is your inner child actually experiencing that? Or is that how you are seeing her? That is the perspective lens that you are looking through. And she looked at her hands and said, I am creating this. And I said, yeah, girl, that actually happened. So it is real, but you are continuing to iterate that story within yourself. And that's why you're in this liminal space of being stuck and in the void, because at the same time, you also don't feel worthy. You do not feel deserving. You feel that maybe you haven't worked hard enough to get to the fairy godmother chapter or the knight in shining armor or the prince. And so you're continuously cleaning and cleaning and cleaning like Cinderella does. Okay. And what that is symbolic for is shame and guilt. You're like, something is wrong with me. If I could figure out how to make forward movement, I would have done that already. So there's a problem with me, when that's not true. The reason that you experienced all those things is generational ancestral trauma, things that your parents and teachers and society and religion and culture have conditioned you with. And then you are over here, a very self-aware being who is continuously picking up new tools and techniques and is very self-aware and evolved and healing. You have gone through all of this muck over and over and over again. When is going to be enough? When are you going to give yourself permission to be in a new story? There's only so much healing you can do before one day you have to say, actually, I think I'm okay. I'm ready to move forward. And as an example, there was a time in my life where I was dealing with a lot of money wounds and lack mentality and scarcity. And that was a real reality for me. Excuse me. That was a real reality for me that I was living. And so I was listening to all these videos from people who were helping me heal those things. And then I just stopped making forward movement, and I was stuck. And my higher self came in and said, girl, you are programming yourself to have more money wounds by listening to people talk about money wounds. Like, what if you have already done so much work on these, and now it's actually time to embrace the new you and move forward? Shadow work is absolutely amazing. Trauma healing, and that's going to be a continuous journey through life. But sometimes we are keeping ourselves in old paradigms or prisons within ourselves when it's just absolutely not necessary. My friend has been spending so much time working on these things. I was like, girl, you got to give yourself permission to move on. And one of the ways that you can do this, as I said, well, your inner child is feeling like she is in the Cinderella story, like actually within it. You know, I've seen movies before where you jump into a storybook and that has served y'all because it's helped you do all the shadow work and trauma healing. What would be beneficial for you to do is write a completely new one. Like, literally sit down and write your own fantasy story. And what I told her, when we are looking at movies, for example, they always have this plot line of, I'm going to start somewhere that's really arduous and in lack and scarcity, or something like wild going on, traumatic. And then you go through all of these challenges in order to prove your worth or your strength or your resiliency. And it follows the hero's journey framework, if you've heard that before. It's a story that's told time and time and time again, and it's a beautiful story. That's not what we're doing in this new storybook, though, because you've already done all that. It is okay to write a storyline where there's only positive things that happen. It's rainbows and unicorns and kittens and silly goose. It just make it a really wonderful experience. And that's where you can start from. There doesn't have to be all of these crazy challenges for you to prove things to yourself. That is what is keeping you stuck. And in the Cinderella story, the old narratives, that's not necessary. I'm not saying there won't be challenges that come up throughout life, because that is how we grow and evolve. But the density level of rags to riches that we are experiencing, and I'm not just talking about money, I'm talking about challenges in all areas of life. Like, we feel like we are just going through the ringer. That is a safety mechanism that is running in your field right now. Of, if I work hard enough, I will clear this. Well, you're going to be there forever. Because there's no outlet to that, where you could change it and say, actually, I am living a wonderful life because of me. And it can be very easy and fun and filled with joy and laughter and whimsy, but that is a choice that I need to make. I have got to change the perspective lenses of my life sucks. And I know that's difficult when we are going through really tumultuous things, and I have been there too in life many a time. When you are hyper focused on tumultuous experiences, you will get more of them. It's like when I was working in 9-to-5 jobs that I really did not enjoy. It was not the vibe. I was so upset working at them, and it just made everything 10 times worse because I'm focused on negativity. And it was a lesson that I needed to go through, because what I found out was, you focus on what you do love currently, and then you will get more things to love, and then eventually that shifts you out of where you're at, because this over here is no longer a frequency match, because it is rooted in sadness and despair and angst. It's just, if you keep focusing on that, then you'll just get more of it, and you'll sink deeper into that timeline. Or if you say, these are all the things I love right now, and how can I make this more fun and easier of an experience, and what is this teaching me? How am I going to use these lessons that I'm learning in the future? And we're more pointed in that direction, then you will naturally gravitate to new things. The universe will bring you new opportunities and people and experiences that are more alignment with those new vibrations and frequencies that you're feeling and putting your energy and attention on. So back to the beach, I asked her shadow aspect, why don't you call your inner child in here? And she said, oh, wouldn't she be scared of me because of what happened earlier with the cabinet situation? And I said, why would she be scared of you? And she said, because of what happened. I said, that didn't happen. I said, that's a timeline that doesn't exist anymore. The whole Cinderella experience, that's gone. We just cleared that out. So why would she be scared of you? That's a choice that we make. Either you can choose to be in the old timeline or you can choose to be in the new one. And she said, oh. And she called her in, and they both hugged each other and they were crying, and she said, let's go play in the water. Let's go have fun. We don't need to talk about any of this stuff anymore. We're going to move forward. And they were both happy and embracing one another. And in a actual 3D experience for homework, I told her, write a new story. It doesn't have to be a novel. It doesn't have to be a bazillion pages long. Sit down with your inner child or your inner children and say, let's write a very fun, positive, inspiring, empowering story that is not riddled with challenges. We're just going on an amazing experience. Because when you are trying to shift into a new timeline, it is difficult because you do not have contrast. Now, if we actually write a new children's story for them, you can ask yourself, is the decision that I am making right now, or the thought, in alignment with my new story or the old story, the Cinderella story? You can actually feel the vibrations and frequencies in your body of, am I going back or am I moving forward? And if you have a solid concept to give to your inner children through a storybook, you can say, hey, are we doing the old one or the new one? The new one sounds a lot more fun. It sounds a lot easier. Let's stay in this one. And we're not going to shame and guilt them when the old stuff comes up, because it will. That's going to help you actually make forward movement, to have the contrast, because every single time you make a choice to not go back, it launches you further forward. And then eventually this one over here is not even in your peripheral anymore. And my final example here, I was on a car ride one day and I was listening to this coach, and she said, you are not going to be able to move forward into your next level of abundance in life, in all areas, relationships, finances, career, business, if you keep on talking about your past. Talking about my past had been very healing at one point, because it helped me work through the things that I was currently experiencing. Then I hit this precipice point where talking about old things was keeping my frequency down, because I had had so many consciousness jumps that it was pulling me back and tethering me back to old timelines and paradigms. And when she said that, I was thinking about when I was a child, I had grown up in a lot of lack, and I was telling my clients about that to show them how far I had come in life. And my higher self came in and she said, hey, do you think that is helping you, or do you think that is keeping your inner children in a prison of lack? And I said, oh, I didn't realize that continuously speaking that narrative over them was keeping them there in that time and space in the astral fields. Like, and they're just hearing me say those things about them over and over and over again. And in that moment, I thought I could just choose a new story for them. I don't have to keep on referencing back these times in my life. We could just start fresh right now. And one of the ways that you can do that is actually sitting down and creating a story with them and make it really immersive. And that's going to be such a fun activity for you to do with them. That's going to build a lot of trust and open lines of communication. And what a fun way to connect with them. They would absolutely love that. You don't have to just do it with one of your inner children. You do it multiples of your inner children, but really take a moment to say, we are exiting the Cinderella narrative. We have already, like, we were born, this is an example that I gave her. We were born a princess. We were born a queen. We were born beautiful and rich and fabulous. And now we're going to go have adventures with our magic and whimsy and riches and beauty, internal, external. We're going to talk to all of our forest friends, animals, and go visit different villages and different castles and our princess friends, or, you know, whatever. And that might not be relevant to you because not everybody vibes with the princess, queen. You could be a monarch, you could be a king, you could be a wizard. You could be a magician or an alchemist or a mage or a sorceress, enchantress. You could be a fairy, an elf, a dragon. It doesn't matter. Okay. Whatever archetype that you want to call upon and embody and then create that story, whatever works for you is absolutely perfect. But this is a way to get your inner children very excited about the positive potentialities that are available to you, instead of focusing on what is going wrong and shame and guilt if I'm not good enough and I can't figure this out. Drop that heavy ass baggage. Ew. Yuck. You are just sitting in this tornado of torment. Liberate yourself and your inner children and say, I have done the work. I need to move forward with grace and hyping myself up, hyping y'all up, your inner children. Y'all are amazing. You're brilliant. You're intelligent. You're wise. You're talented. It is, I don't even like to use the word deserve, because that gets into some wonky vibrations of, should I have this if I've worked hard enough and all this stuff, okay? But just for example, we deserve to be in a new story because we are absolutely amazing. And we have completely changed our lives. Well, it's time to start living and breathing and embodying that and moving into the new story and moving on from there. We need to fully embrace the new self. You've been curating it for so long. Embrace it. And so I wanted to share this today in case it supports you on your journey, because oftentimes when we are working on making these big changes in our lives, it feels very intangible because we don't have anything to kind of grab onto. And when I was sharing this symbolism and analogies with her, she said, oh, okay, I get it. Working with interpretations like storybooks and Cinderella, and then writing a new one, that just makes it a lot easier to understand and actually gives you action steps to move forward, and that contrast, so you can run your decisions and choices and the new opportunities and everything that's coming your way. And is this the new story or is this the old story? We're going with the new story option. And it will just be a really good anchor in your consciousness. And so I would love to hear in the comments what your biggest takeaway is. And remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification. Also, if you would like a free guided meditation to unlock new spiritual gifts in your Akashic field, you can find that in my bio or in the comments here below. I am wishing you a absolutely fantastic day. I would love to hear what your new stories are going to be. I would love that. My inner children would love that. If you want to share in the comments, maybe if you already have one that came to mind while you were listening to this, or come back after you write it and let me know. How fun would that be to see everybody's new stories that they are writing and give inspiration to others. Yay. Hey, I love you so much. Wishing you a magical day, and I will see you next time.